It is a beautiful July 7th morning here in the city. Episode 51 is about to kick off. We are talking the NFC South and their fantasy outlook today. Gentlemen, normally we get breaking news and it throws off our entire show. This time, we got breaking news yesterday that didn't throw off our entire show. I'm leading off with our top headlines this morning. Breaking news, not so breaking news this morning, but breaking news. We can finally talk about Baker Mayfield and not some rumor mill, not some reports, not some nonsense. The Carolina Panthers have officially acquired Baker Mayfield from the Cleveland Browns in exchange for a 2025 fifth round pick. The Browns will pay Baker Mayfield $10.5 million this season. The deal has finally been done, gentlemen. Aaron, your thoughts?
Thank God we can finally actually talk about it and not have to be like, well, let's just wait and see. I think this was inevitable. I think this was the move that we kind of all knew would eventually happen to the team that we all thought it would actually happen with. And I know Dylan had mentioned something a while back about if he went to Carolina. I also said that I thought it makes a huge difference going to Carolina versus one of those other teams that didn't really have a good defense or not many weapons there. I think a Christian McCaffrey, a DJ Moore, Robby Anderson, Terrace Marshall, pretty good offensive weapons, decent offensive weapons. I'm not going to say great, but there's some good weapons there. A solid defense. I think it's the perfect fit for Baker. I think it's outside of what he already had, obviously, in Cleveland, but just starting fresh, starting anew. I think it is a good fit, and I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll use that word. Like, I think Baker's talented. I've always said I think he's a good quarterback, but he could never elevate you to get you over that hump. And in the NFL, I believe you need that in most cases. But I do think he's going to have an opportunity to prove himself once again, play with the chip on his shoulder. And I think that's when he's at his best, is when that chip is on his shoulder, right? He's done it pretty much his whole life. And now he gets that chip back on his shoulder where he's going to be looked at as the first round number 1 overall pick, the guy that busts. So I think he gets that chip back, and I think he's in a good spot, and I think he'll win that job easily. And then he'll do good things in Carolina.
Well, there was the report that said that the quarterback 1 job is still open for the Carolina Panthers, and they don't guarantee the spot to Baker Mayfield. I want to correct myself. That trade actually was a 2024 fifth round pick, not a 2025 that I said before. It is a 2024 fifth round pick going to the Cleveland Browns. And for the Browns here, this is obviously coming after they acquired Deshaun Watson and now going through the headaches that are coming and attached to Deshaun Watson. They had to get Baker Mayfield out of here. Is this a good move for the Cleveland Browns, Dylan?
Yes, because, I mean, you can't look at this. You can't go into the season with Baker Mayfield on this roster. And both sides knew that. Both sides knew that you can't get it done. I mean, you look at Baker Mayfield and what he's done throughout his career in Cleveland. I mean, hell, he got him to the postseason, right? That's something not a lot of Browns quarterbacks have done, not many in a very long time. I mean, he was solid for their franchise, but at the end of the day, once they acquired Deshaun Watson, that really soured the taste in the mouth. The whole relationship there was fractured a little bit before that. But, I mean, you can't go into the season with this guy on your roster. Both sides knew he was either going to end up being cut or he was going to have to end up being traded, which the latter happened here today. There was no way that he could have gone into the season on that roster. That relationship was just completely fractured. So, of course, it's the right move for Cleveland right here. Just parting ways with him and finding a suitable trade partner to where he has an opportunity to go start and be a quarterback in this league again. And they get some sort of compensation, albeit as little. You're not getting much for him because they knew that he had to move on from that situation.
Yeah, that's the thing. When we talked about it throughout this entire process was the Browns were not going to get something that was going to be this massive, great package. I mean, we saw what Carson Wentz went for before. They weren't going to get anything like that. It just wasn't. They just weren't going to, with the fact that he was done in Cleveland. They still owed him money, and they would have had to eat it, and they did eat some money finally. And now he is a Carolina Panther. AJ, for the Carolina Panthers standpoint, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. Who's the rookie that they brought in? What is it? Not
Matt
Sam
Corral.
Howell. Matt Corral. I always get those two kids mixed up. Quarterback position here in Carolina, it is Baker's, right? Or are you thinking that there will be a legit competition, a serious competition come training camp and preseason?
No, I think Sam Darnold got a fair shake in their eyes. I know we talked a little bit about how we thought he could do it. We thought he was a little bit more talented than it seemed to translate on the field. But I think they traded up to draft Matt Corral, and then they still went out, and even when everything broke down multiple times, still went back for a third date with Baker Mayfield and brought him in. So clearly they don't believe in Sam Darnold enough. And I mean, I don't know the level of wow he would have to give in training camp in a legit competition for them to say, all right, thanks, Baker. We ate half of your salary. We're paying you this bonus, but we're going to start Sam Darnold again. And if he proves he can't do it, then we'll let you play. I mean, you brought him in on the back end of his deal, knowing that you're more than likely going to have to pay him. He's going to be under center more than likely at the beginning of the season.
I did want to bring up something just to kind of play devil's advocate because I know what I said, but I just thought about it a little bit more, especially with AJ's point. They're not really paying Baker a lot, right? They're paying him $5 million. Sam Darnold's due $18 million this year that they're paying him. So I think when statements are made like, hey, they're going to compete, I think it's because Carolina's thinking, well, shit, we kind of need Sam Darnold to give a competition because maybe we do start the season with Sam Darnold saying, hey, he knows the offense. We have to pay him $18 million. I promise you, no team in the NFL wants to pay a backup quarterback $18 million. They don't. So they're probably going to give Sam Darnold that opportunity to earn that job. Now, I think Baker Mayfield's better. I think that's fair to say. So ultimately, I don't think he does win it. But it would not shock me if come week one, they say, hey, Sam's been here. Sam knows the offense. He was here in OTAs. He's going to start. And then Baker Mayfield, once they're 0-6 or once they're 2-4, Baker Mayfield comes in. Because think about this. Baker Mayfield still has to prove he can be worthy of a long-term deal. What is the best way to minimize his value is to not let him on the field, which means if you hold him out for 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season, and then you bring him in and he plays pretty decent, you can minimize what you have to pay him versus if you start him week one and Carolina goes to the playoffs, guess what happens? Now you're paying $20, $30+ million for a quarterback you still might not be sure of. I'm not saying it's going to happen. This is just devil's advocate. But remember one thing about the NFL. Quarterbacks that make $20 million a year, they don't like benching those guys. Simple as that. And Sam Darnold is making almost $20 million a year.
That's chunk change for David Tepper and company.
It's salary cap. It's not about chump change, Dylan. It's salary cap issues. It's $18 million they could have spent somewhere. Owners don't like eating. They just don't.
You brought Baker in to win now. That's the reason you make this move. And I know
Did you though? No, you didn't. You brought Baker to be your franchise quarterback, the future, because that's what you're looking to.
Really?
Remember when Carson Wentz shit the bed and he had just signed that big time contract? They couldn't have Carson Wentz on the bench while Nick Foles was starting. They couldn't, because he was making too much money. You've seen this over and over again with quarterbacks that get paid and maybe they don't live up to it. They end up having to move on because these owners don't want to sit there, look down on that sideline and see what was supposed to be their guy make $18 to $20 million, and they have to stare at him with a helmet and an earpiece holding up, listening to the plays while the other guy's on the field playing. They don't like it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but they don't like it. And let's be real. At the end of the day, most of these owners are about bottom line. They're not always about winning. It's not always about championships. It's about their bottom line. And Sam Darnold still has that bottom line. Devil's advocate, why not let Sam Darnold maybe show some promise like he did through 3 or 4 weeks of the season last year and you trade him? Or or look to trade him. Just get anything back. Maybe you get a 5th or 6th round pick back that you get from him, and maybe you end up having to pay some of his salary. But guess what? You were already paying that 18.5 anyways. So to me, there are other options. I said I think Baker prevails as the starter because I do think he's the more talented player at this point, and I think he's going to prove that. But I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I can't believe it if Sam Darnold was the quarterback week 1.
Yeah, that's fair. The Panthers, so get this, the Panthers traded away in total for the 3 quarterbacks that they have. They traded away a 2nd-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, a 4th-round pick, a 4th-round pick, a 5th and a 6th, all to assemble Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and Matt Corral as their quarterback room. It's a tough look for the Carolina Panthers, and I thought it was funny that Ian Rappaport said finally a good trade for the Carolina Panthers because now acquiring Baker Mayfield, it's finally a good potential trade. What does this mean, though, for Matt Rule, though? That's like where the one last thing I want to touch on with. I mean, is this his last ditch effort to try and be okay? So this has nothing to do with Matt Rule.
It extended him, to be honest. If you make anything, like, it gave him more time, because now you're talking about a quarterback that's coming in July. Training camp starts at the end of the month. He didn't have OTAs. He doesn't know the playbook. He's got to learn. We're 2 months from season, and we're expecting them to come out and do something special. To me, I just think it extends Matt Rule's opportunity. Now, if they're atrocious, anybody can get fired. But if they're trying to treading water, winning games, losing games, and they look like they're making some sort of strides and Baker's playing decent, I think it just buys them another year, at least.
Okay. We're going to talk about the Carolina Panthers and their fantasy outlook in just a few moments. Especially, I mean, this is huge, bringing in Baker Mayfield to be your quarterback and what implications it means for the wide receivers and company